All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the August Spotlight Talk from the Wharton Esherick Museum, focused on our 32nd annual Juried Woodworking Show, Breaking Ground. My name is Ethan Snyder, and I'm the Manager of Collections and Public Programs at the Wharton Esherick Museum, and we are going to be hearing all about the Juried Woodworking Show from Emily Zilber, our Director of Curatorial Affairs and Strategic Partnerships. And before I hand it over to Emily, I'm sure you all kind of know the small ground rules that we have. So we'll ask that for the duration of Emily's presentation, that you keep yourselves all on mute, and we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So you're welcome to either save your questions and hold on to them, or you're free to drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to keep track of all of them so that everyone's questions get answered. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Emily Zilber to start sharing her screen and giving this presentation. So thank you, Emily.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ethan. And welcome to everyone. It's great to be here with you today to talk about Breaking Ground, the 32nd Annual Juried Woodworking Exhibition here at WEM. I'm really looking forward to spending time together today, kind of exploring both this specific exhibition and some of the artists who are included in it, as well as thinking about the Juried Woodworking Exhibition program a little more broadly. So if you're less familiar with it, you have a little more background, and also thinking about how this kind of program that focuses on contemporary artists fits into the work that we do to celebrate Wharton Esherick's legacy here at WEM. So we'll get started. What is the Juried Woodworking Exhibition? If you've not, been a part of it before, this program began at WEM in 1994 as a way to encourage and celebrate new, creative, and imaginative work in wood that connects to Esherick's legacy. So each year, the exhibition is organized around a theme that reflects an aspect of Esherick's career, practice, his ideas about creating. And I'm showing here three images from the last three Juried Woodworking Exhibition catalogs. So our 29th annual Juried show, which was Telling Tales, so thinking about storytelling, from the 30th, which was about rhythms, and the 31st, which is ideas of renewal. So these are all things that are kind of core to Esherick's career, and we get to ask artists to interpret them. Over the years that we've been doing this, professional woodworkers, artists, designers, hobbyists, craftspeople from around the globe, so we get an international group of people who submit to this show, have responded to these themes with thousands of unique works. So the result is that we have a program that brings together a wide range of approaches to working in wood, while continuing to explore what Esherick's legacy can mean for artists working today. How do we choose a theme? This is an interesting question that I often get asked. So if you've joined us for other Spotlight talks this year, you know that many of those have focused on an important anniversary that we're celebrating in 2026, which is the 100th anniversary of Esherick's completion of the first phase of construction on the studio. And I'm showing here, an image of that studio early, not 1926, but in the 1930s, as well as up on the hill, this woodblock print from 1927 that kind of glimpses the studio, that first piece of it, through Esherick's creative and artistic eyes. This was really a pivotal moment for Esherick that required both a literal and symbolic groundbreaking, although it was one that was many years in the making. Long before the first mound of dirt was shoveled or stone was laid, Esherick really was imagining how he might channel evolving creative and material interests into a space that could fully express those things. We know the studio is this deeply personal space and reflects the aesthetic and ideological ground that Esherick broke throughout his career. And every addition and modification marks this moment of experimentation for Esherick. So we think of the studio as this evolving expression of what it means to break new ground. And that's where groundbreaking as the theme kind of came from as we were celebrating this year. So for the 32nd year of the exhibition, we wanted to kind of explore just how many ways the idea of breaking ground might be understood. So we've invited contemporary artists to take inspiration from whatever they consider groundbreaking, drawing on lots of different ideas about the term. And I'm showing you here some of the questions that we posed in the call for submissions to give you a sense of how expansive this idea might be, right? How does Wharton Esherick's life and work seem groundbreaking in 2026? Whether it's public or personal, what ideas or shifts feel groundbreaking in this complex moment in history? We're at this interesting time. What groundbreaking tools, moments, ideas have shaped your own personal artistic practice? And then, what happens after a groundbreaking, right? We have the ribbon cutting, we have the first shovel of dirt out of the ground, but how do we build? What comes after that? And so these are just some of the ways we encourage folks to think about this. The breadth of answers was reflected in the diversity of the finalists for the exhibition and the overall pool of applicants, which was, we had over 120 applicants for a show that includes about 25 artists. So a really nice mix of people to choose from. I will mention that the competition is open to both emerging and established makers working across artistic disciplines. And there is just one requirement other than that they have some engagement with the theme, which is that wood must be part of the finished work. So we're really thinking about this expansively, both in terms of that thematic approach, but also in terms of what makes sense in a juried woodworking exhibition. Every year, I work with two fantastic external jurors who bring their own perspective and understanding to the theme of the applications. And it changes every year. This year, we were so lucky to have our first juror be Tom Lozier, who's a nationally renowned furniture maker and educator. Tom was the chair of the University of Wisconsin-Madison Department of Art from 2009 to 2014, and the head of the wood and furniture area at Madison from 1991 to 2020. So incredible artist, but also a really expansive teaching career, and somebody who, as an educator, I think helps facilitate many young artists through moments of great breaking ground in their own work. Tom designs and builds one-of-a-kind functional, and he calls them functional and dysfunctional objects that are often carved and painted and draw inspiration from the history of object making. Our second juror was Joyce Lynn, who is an artist and sculptural furniture designer. Joyce experiments with a diverse range of materials to explore connections between outer surfaces and interiors, as well as the ongoing erosion of boundaries between the natural and the man-made. Luckily for all of us local folks, and I encourage you to engage with this if you haven't already, you can see Joyce's work here in Philadelphia in Out of Place, the Wingate Arts Residency Program in Wood at the Museum for Art in Wood. And I'm showing Red Oak Roast, one of the pieces that's in that exhibition, as well as Coat Tree, which is the Joyce's work that's one of the icons for the show. I hope everyone gets a chance to see this before it closes in late October. You've got lots of time. So for the jurying process, I ask each juror to score works individually using a set of broad criteria that I'm showing here. They provide a framework rather than a strict rubric, since each juror might interpret and weigh these things differently based on their own experience and perspective. So creativity, innovation, or artistic achievement in the way that they think about the topic, level of craftsmanship and effective use of materials, aesthetic and conceptual interest in the work, and then other considerations that really matter to them. They get to sort of think about that. Once those individual scores are in, we use aggregate scores as a starting point for final selection. And the jurors and I have in-depth conversations about approximately 40 to 50 of the highest scoring works. We aim for a final group of approximately 25 artists with top placements awarded to 4 of the selected works. Those you can see in our visitor center. All of the finalists are included in the virtual exhibition and publication that accompanies the exhibition, but you can come, I'm showing images here of those works installed through September 20th. You can come and spend some time with these works at WEM. So I want to start talking about some of the works that you will see, not only if you come to WEM, but also if you spend some time with the publication or virtual materials. Our first place winner, Christian Burchard, submitted a work that represents a new direction within a multi-decade, very successful artistic career for this artist. Christian's well known for sculptural work in Madrone and particularly for his book forms. But here in this piece, Never Again 2, um, it finds Christian breaking new ground within familiar territory. So for many years, he's created these individual books and small groupings of books, but Burchard felt that he had not yet fully tapped the symbolic power of books, including what they represent about what our culture can achieve and how we document our history. So he's assembled these books into this artfully composed pile, alluding to the troubling image of a book burning. The individual books here are less important than what they can achieve together. And so their surfaces are rough and varied. Each is warped and moved in its own way. They're cut from different parts of the tree, but they now come together to form this unified whole. Burchard explains when in conversation that he was looking for more meaning, and I'm quoting him here. I wanted to raise my voice and start saying something meaningful addressing issues of our time, and working books gives me that opportunity. His understanding of breaking ground is not necessarily about pursuing entirely new ideas, but rather digging deeper into what he already does. So, in this current moment, right, where history, truth, the validity of personal narratives from people of all backgrounds can feel under attack, Burchard is using this iconography that's familiar to him to do something different, to call our attention to what is threatened and ask us to consider what we are called to do in response to that. Our second place winner, Haniel Wides, looks to historical forms in order to break new ground. Creep, the piece that I'm showing here, draws on Wides' extensive training in traditional furniture making, carpentry, restoration, while pushing the familiar form of the Windsor chair in unexpected directions. So Wides has explained, and I'm going to quote them here, to me, the theme Breaking Ground sounded like Wem was searching for something new, which is what I was doing when I came up with Creep. I didn't want it to look like anything I'd ever made or anyone else had made. And then they describe the work as a product of curiosity, exploration, experimentation, and getting a little freaky. Wides' approach echoes a groundbreaking question that Esherick also pursued throughout his practice, which is like what happens when we refuse to adhere to the quote unquote correct way of doing things, and how might that refusal lead us to something new, unexpected, exciting, and sort of shift for our practice. I love this photograph that was taken, before Wides even knew that they were going to be submitting to this exhibition, because we've got this sort of Esherick-coated chess set in the corner, which I think was not made with that connection in mind, but it seems lovely and resonant. So I want to show you work by third place winner Terry Evans, who's represented in this exhibition by immaculately crafted and thoughtfully composed boxes that demonstrate how breaking new ground can emerge from technical skill, lavish materiality, meticulous construction. It doesn't just have to be a rejection. Evans explains, and I'm going to quote him here, in its basic form, bandsaw making is a simple process. It does, however, leave open the possibility to invent, create, and innovate. And so Evans is thinking about his decades of practice, pushing this form in new directions through techniques including abrasive sculpting and the development of this distinctive stacking box process, which I'm going to show here. This piece comes apart into these separate components. So, Evans boxes offer this intimate and interactive experience, inviting users to rearrange these components in ways that activate the mind, that encourage a moment of play. And so the last person that you'll see if you come to WEM to see the works in this exhibition is our honorable mention winner, Robert Iosa, who explores the breaking ground theme from yet a different perspective. Um, IOSA is not positioning humanity as the primary witness to and consumer of nature, and instead asking us to consider how nature bears witness to our ever growing incursions into its territory. We've got these gorgeous leaves that are unassuming, immaculately crafted. They reflect those found in the natural world, but when we isolate them on the gallery wall or the printed page, they become impossible to overlook, right? This is a leaf that if it was just on the ground, we might step on it without a second thought, but instead we have to engage with these beautiful objects in the space. By centering this kind of ephemeral element of nature, rather than the buildings or structures that we construct as monuments to ourselves, our needs, IOSA is directing our attention to things that are often overlooked and speaks to the notion of how groundbreaking it might be to prioritize nature's perspective over a human one. The exhibition also includes works that take the idea of breaking ground into deeply personal territory. I'm showing work here by Fred Chase, who has been a licensed psychologist for 41 years, but over the past 15 years has developed a deep passion for wood turning. Fred works exclusively with locally gathered wood, creating both green and twice turned vessels. Outer Inner, which I'm showing here, features this unusual structural form, a surface design built around two distinct approaches to iconography. We've got upper and lower portions that have these repeating motifs that have identifiable organic forms in them. And then between them in the central band, this more spontaneous composition where Chase has allowed this imagery to develop without preliminary sketches. This is kind of free form, it's unplanned in the same way. And so as the viewer moves around the piece, Chase describes finding a vast trove of possibilities by integrating this intense and detailed surface design colored with Prismacolor artist markers into the mix. And so, Chase has found few existing models for this kind of work and embraced the freedom to make up his own rules. That's kind of a groundbreaking by becoming an artist in this latter part of a life, but also figuring out what your own ideas and commitments are in terms of your creative practice. The idea of making up your own rules and reframing kind of the way that sort of engagement with feeling happens also appears in this work, Nothing to Prove by Mia Donaldson. So we've got this elongated cabinet that moves a rock when a viewer opens its drawer. And so I'm going to go to the next slide, which gives you a sense of how that works. And so we've got the drawer opening, and then in order to close it again, you can see that the rock hits the shelf there. So I'll go back here. This work is hung on the wall at the height of the artist's sternum, and that rock kind of represents almost a heart. It invites viewers to participate. By opening the drawer, the viewer, the person who's engaging with this, helps carry the weight of grief that the artist describes carrying daily. As the cabinet gradually is damaged, kind of under its own burden, right? Anyone who's engaging with it is also harming it. The work becomes a metaphor for asking for help and support. It also addresses what Donaldson calls durational loneliness. So this sense of isolation, while deeply personal, is not unique. We're looking at an object that talks about how in a culture that often prioritizes individualism over community support, an object like this proposes craft and participation and engagement as alternative ways of making connection. By literally allowing the cabinet to break itself through use, Donaldson asks us to consider whether breaking down our own barriers might make space for connection. Other works in the exhibition approach the idea of groundbreaking moments through technology, history, the process of learning. I'm showing here New Analog Typing Machine by Cole Messenger. which appropriates the familiar QWERTY keyboard that we all use every day and transforms it into a system for movable type printing. So these can be used, as you might use individual typepieces in letterpress. And so we've got a work here that traces this lineage of groundbreaking inventions from the printing press to the typewriter to the digital keyboard that have fundamentally shaped how we communicate and puts them all into a single object. He's taking this keyboard and returning it to an earlier method of text-based communication and disrupting our assumptions about technological progress. Asking here what's gained, what's lost as communication technologies evolved, and whether breaking technological ground and moving forward always means leaving the past behind. Showing here a work by George Sawyer, Too Much is Never Enough, Foundations of My Craft Practice, where the artist is exploring work, repetition, and experimentation and how those things are required to break ground and build a foundation for any kind of craft practice. So we've got a work here that brings together a collection of baluster-style legs that the artist hand-turned and found to be imperfect in a variety of ways. These turnings support a granite slab quarried in Woodbury, Vermont, which is the artist's home. And if I go to the next image here, you can see the catalog of leg imperfections, the things that were lacking in these individual turnings that made them not quite appropriate for a final piece of furniture, but perfect to represent the process of learning through trial and error, repetition, hands-on experience. And rather than hiding mistakes, the work gives them a place of honor. So in Too Much is Never Enough, we've got this reminder that strong and resilient foundations are not built through perfection, but through how we try, fail, and try again, and how in doing so, we often break new ground in our own lives. And I want to show you, one final piece that I'll highlight here is a work by Mark Sperry. This is On Solid Ground. This is also something that centers around the idea of learning through experience. So in this past fall, Sperry built a low, dry-laid stone wall in his home. It was his first experience using stone as a building material, and the process was labor-intensive. It required digging a footing, laying and tamping crushed stone, carefully fitting multiple courses of rock, and repeatedly rebuilding sections of the wall until it felt right. So in total, Sperry moved approximately 40 tons of rock, crushed stone, and soil to make a very modest wall, which gave him a new respect for the walls, the rock walls here at the Wharton Esherick Museum. As he was doing this process, he set aside a stone that struck him as a potentially interesting base for a future work. And Wem's breaking ground theme provided the spark he needed to put that stone to use. So I think that's a great observation to make, to know that, for these juried woodworking exhibitions, you can either submit a work that is already produced that resonates with the theme, or you can use the theme to prompt you into sort of making new and exciting work. And so one of the things that's so exciting about this is that Sperry has had a long and remarkable career, not only as an artist, but as somebody who has done extensive research on Wharton Esherick and curatorial work on the artist. But here we've got new ground. This is Sperry's first work to incorporate stone into his practice. And so we're so thrilled to have that shift, that new way of thinking about material included in the Breaking Ground exhibition. So, together, the artists who we've shown here, in addition to the installation here at the museum, our virtual exhibition, which I'm showing, we're kind of going through the website here, features the work of all 26 artists included in the show. Their work is also featured in a publication, which is available for as a hard copy for purchase, but also as a free digital download. Both the virtual exhibition and the publication include information about all of the artists included, along with links to their websites and social media accounts. And I encourage you to explore the work beyond what you've seen here today. I'll also encourage folks to, um, you know, read more about these artists in our Notes from the Studio blog, where we have expanded interviews with the prize-winning artists. I'm showing some of those that have been posted over the duration of the summer. I'll also encourage folks to vote for our Viewers' Choice Award. The last prize that we give is one for a piece that has resonated with the audience, and you can choose from all of the works featured in the exhibition, not just the ones on site at WEM. This QR code works here, but we'll also send out a link in the follow-up that allows you to kind of tell us what really resonated with you. I've loved getting to share information about this project with you. I want to just leave you with a couple of teasers for things that are coming up at WEM before we open things up for questions, especially the program on August 29th, this Saturday, when artist and teacher Mark Kobosh, whose work is a part of Breaking Ground, will lead a glass painting workshop inspired in part by Esherick's own experiments with painted glass, so some groundbreaking things there. And then our book club is meeting on September 2nd. I also want to let folks know what's coming up next in the Visitor Center after Breaking Ground departs on September 20th. We're delighted to welcome the Philadelphia-based artist Jennifer Johnson as our 2026 Artist in Residence in October for an exhibition there. Johnson is a sculptor. She works primarily in clay, creating installations that explore how architecture reveals lived experience and how places hold and produce history. Johnson's been visiting WEM since the winter of 2025. She's getting to know the history of the site, Esherick's biography, the unique geometry of the studio, and it's going to be a spectacular show. I'll also mention that we have a special member Sunday in the studio focused with on Jennifer. So if you are thinking about becoming a member, it's never been a better time. And with that, I'd love to open it up to questions. I know we're coming to the end of our time together, but love to chat with all of you.
Yeah, let me just start off, Emily, by saying how wonderful it was to see all of that work shared, and to hear you kind of illuminate some of the stuff behind it. And it is really incredible, the kind of diversity and variability of the work that responded to this call in Breaking Ground. And it's really wonderful to see that this exhibition gave people an opportunity to dig deeper into their practices, to exhibit daring and experimental work for the first time, but even also to break ground themselves in response to this call, like we saw with Mark's
Yeah.
Fury. So I want to say thank you and how much we appreciate you kind of sharing the breadth of work in this amazing show this year.
Well, the lovely thing about that is that it's all Wharton, right? So the prompts to push people to do those things come from drawing on what Esherick did in his own career. And so that's, again, a way of affirming that legacy. All of those responses have to do with that prompt from Esherick's own life and career. So I think it's an important, tie and way to show how we celebrate contemporary voices, even at a historic artist home and studio.
All right, so if folks are gathering their questions, I see, William, that you're off mute. Do you have a question for Emily? Well, people are gathering their thoughts. Let me start us off with a question, which might help some people formulate their thoughts too. Was there anything, Emily, that was particularly surprising to you in this exhibition? Maybe something that showed you an interpretation of groundbreaking that you weren't expecting necessarily, or broke ground in just, yeah, in ways that no one was expecting that might have, changed your interpretation or even the kind of call for the show.
Well, I will say I was. This is maybe not exactly the answer to your question, but we have never. I've been doing this exhibition for several years now. We have never, and you can see it a little bit in what was shared today. We have never had so many applicants submitting work with stone in it.
Mm.
Never. And so, it was so interesting to me that we have things that are sort of deeply personal and very intimate. And then we have this people here breaking ground. They see it as an opportunity to bring sculpture and stone into the mix. And that was really interesting to see. We typically we get applications here from around the globe. We always get an international pool. We get, unfortunately, far more than we can include, and it's really the jurors' interests and focus that help to kind of determine who comes in. Um, what I will say is that having two jurors who are educators, um, the notion of somebody sort of breaking ground as they are learning something new about themselves or their practice was something that we really focused on in a lot of the works that we saw this year. Thank you, Mary, for that lovely compliment. I appreciate and certainly so do the artists.
I'd like to say thank you for sharing all this. My first time. I've known the museum since 1984, so it's a few years now. But look forward to the next competition.
And are you an artist yourself, or just a consumer of the show?
I am an artist. I actually put two pieces in, but wasn't selected.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so
I hope that you will continue to do so because it changes every year. I bring in new jurors. And for anyone else who is interested, now that you've submitted, you are on my mailing list of artists I reach out to let them know about artist opportunities. So, in addition to just being a part of our juried show family, which I think once you've submitted, you're a part of that family. We let you know what's going on here, and I'm so pleased that you shared the work.
yeah, no, thank you. I actually submitted three times. I was chosen once, so
Okay,
it's
fabulous. Well, so
all
so
good.
I think that's a wonderful testament to anyone who's on here who thinks that if it doesn't work one time, try and try again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Yep.
both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions that come up later, you're more than welcome to email me at ethan@whartoneshericmuseum.org, as well as emily@whartoneshericmuseum.org. And we'll be sending out, as we usually do, a little follow-up with the recording of today's talk in a couple of days, along with a ton of resources that Emily kind of highlighted or briefly mentioned in this talk. They'll all come your way in an email. And thank you all so much for attending. It's really nice to continue to see people attend all of the Spotlight talks that we host, and we're really appreciative for your continued engagement with us. And just another thanks from, I think, Carol Carino, who says, "Thank you. This was so interesting and looking forward to visiting again soon." Yeah, so thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you next month, and we'll be announcing the next Spotlight talk very shortly. So thank you all.